I'm recording to this computer now. We're going to be here for a while. And again, I just wanted to, I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Okay.
Is that Rosemary?
No.
Oh, okay. I saw the first. I thought maybe there was some.
Okay, so can everybody see my screen all right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, the other thing I'd like so again, thanks for everybody for attending this workshop today on using best practices from the Lean Startup method and Agile systems engineering, software engineering, and project management for initial project planning. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my stop my video because I'm going to be reading from slides and I'll just bounce back and forth and sort of look kind of funny. So now you should just see the INCOSE Chesapeake Chapter logo as far as as far as I'm concerned. And thanks very much to the International Council on Systems Engineering Chesapeake Chapter for platform hosting the workshop today. And so again, I'm Mike Pafford. For those I haven't met yet, and for the next couple of hours with breaks, I'll be going through with you a hybrid initial project planning approach that I've facilitated several times now to help any project get going. That is to help them get it right from the start. And so here's where everybody can immediately get all the materials that I'll be using or refer to in this workshop. If everybody can see the chat, we're going to be using chat a lot today. So if everybody can see the chat, I put the tiny URL in the chat, and I'll so that goes along with this QR code here. So all this is where you can immediately get all the materials that I'm using in this workshop. Everybody with a QR code reader can scan the code in the lower right here and go right to the Dropbox folder with all of the materials. And if you're an INCOSE member, you can also navigate to the Lean Startup Method and Agile for IPP folder in the Object-Oriented Systems Engineering Method work group and get not only these materials, but all the materials from all of the talks, tutorials, and workshops all the way back to December of 2015. So there's a lot of information in there on this particular subject. Now, anyone not able to or not allowed to because of work or something like that, to access either the QR code, the tiny URL, or Dropbox on the regular internet, can of course email me later and I'll get all the materials to you. So again, that you can see here how you would navigate to getting all of the two URLs at the bottom here are just URLs for the QR code. So here's what's in the materials folder. There's a PDF version of the slides. There's also a PDF version of the slides notes pages. I always let everybody have the notes pages for all my slides. There's an LSM and Agile for IPP flyer that you can, that just says in one page what this idea is all about. There's a memo there with links to this material on YouTube. And there's also a nice 2013 Harvard Business article on Lean Startup written by Mr. Steve Blank of Stanford University. And there's a student and an adult version of something called the Systems Thinking Roundtable Guide, which I'm going to introduce to you all here in a little bit for those that don't know about it already. There's a PDF fillable business model canvas that has to do with one of the project focus mechanisms I'm going to be talking about, and another PDF fillable lean canvas, and a briefing on the business model canvas versus the lean canvas to give you an idea of what's the difference between them and how you can tailor them. And also there's a 2020 Agile Scrum guide that just came out last November. And you can see the QR code there on the right and the URLs again for getting to all these materials that you can follow along if you want to during the workshop. A little bit more of administrivia here. We'll have breaks. We'll have breaks, but just come and go as you need to. All of the materials have already been made available to everybody. And I was going to put my Zoom picture today as a materials QR code, but that's not necessary. I think everybody's got the QR code and we've got the tiny URL in the chat. So, and we're going to use chat today a lot, well, just as if we were flip charts in real life. And so one of the things you'll want to be able to do is to save the chat. And for anybody that doesn't know how to save the chat, down at the bottom of the chat, there's something called file, which means you can upload a file. But next to that are three little dots. And those three little dots will allow you to click on that and save the chat. And it'll save it to your computer as a TXT file. And so you can go back later on. The other thing about the chat is if the chat gets long and so on and so forth during this workshop, save the chat more than once and it'll just replace the one that's already there. You won't get a new one. It'll just replace the one that's already there with a full chat. So if you save chat 10 times or something during the workshop, at the end of the workshop, you'll have all of the chat, and then you'll be able to go in there and edit the TXT file like you want it. So there'll also be some polls, a couple of polls today. I'll make sure to add all the poll results to the workshop materials later on. And I am recording the workshop, and I think Clinton, you're also recording the workshop. So we have a couple of different people recording the workshop. And I do hope to have a book giveaway. I'll be working with Clinton Hilliard and the organizers from the chapter to give a book away. It's a small book called Systems Engineering for All by Jordan Tusinoff, a very good book. It's a brand new book published just this year on introduction to systems engineering. So I'll work with Clint to spin the wheel on that to see who would and randomly pick a winner. So let's do something in the chat right now. If you all wouldn't mind, if you want to, type into the chat now your name and email, but don't send it. Don't send it. One of the things I learned about at one of the previous Zoom meetings is something called a chat storm. That if everybody just goes ahead and types what they want into the chat and just stand by, and then when I say go ahead and submit, then all of that subject will remain grouped together. Will remain grouped together in the chat. So that's referred to as a chat storm. So if everybody wants to type into the chat their name and email. Okay, but let's see.
I'm sorry, I sent it.
Oh, that's good. Then we'll just all hit return right now. Yep. See, and so you now and so then when you save chat, for example, if you come over and save chat, you'll be able to that's maybe the first time you'll save chat to have everybody's contact information. Then you can see where it says show in folder, and you can see where it is in the folder, and you can change that to something else. So it's nice to see everybody. So we'll use that chat. We'll use that chat storm function maybe a couple of times, where you'll just type something in and then we'll hit the return. And also during as I mentioned a while ago, please come and go as you need to and remain muted, but everybody does have the ability to at any time unmute and ask a question or say something out loud. If you want the question or something like that to remain as a record, then you can of course ask the question, but also type it into chat. And then when you save the chat, you'll have the question also. So I have a few of these in here that I use every once in a while at what I call motivation slides. And this one you all probably recognize. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. So what I want to do now is I want to run a poll. Let's try a poll now. So let's run a poll and say, why are we here today? So let me launch this poll, and if you see it, go ahead and answer it and submit it back. And if anybody can't hear it, please speak up. But otherwise, you should hear it, and there should be a few, let's see, Clinton and myself, well, we won't be, but the other three of you should be able to respond. And I'll give you a minute or so here to go ahead and respond. Okay, so I can end the polling now. So you could, let's see, share the results of the polling now. I need, let's see, I need this. Can everybody see the share the poll results? All right, good. So that's mostly yeah, education and what I mean by education, I'm a former instructor for the Johns Hopkins University. So education to me is when you first learn about the concept. Training is when you have the concept, but you're going to be you're taught how to apply it. And then if you already have had it in school and you've been through a training class and you're actually on the job practicing it or something like that, then that would be practice. If you're a practitioner, that would be practice. And then if you really do know the stuff, but you're coming back for what's called continuing professional education, that would be review. So that gives us a good idea of what's going on with this particular poll. So thanks a lot for answering that. So here's another little motivational slide that I use. This one is, if anybody knows, this is Mr. John Lydon, L-Y-D-O-N, Mr. John Lydon. He had a 1976 song called Anarchy in the UK. Of course, we all know him as Johnny Rotten, but that his real name is John Lydon. And I actually took this slide from another Agile Systems Development presentation. And maybe as a lot of you may know, a key Agile principle says that getting the process right will usually result in getting the product right. And this initial project planning is all about process. But if you get the process right, and if you use it right every single time, as the Agile folks adhere to, you can have a pretty good level of confidence that your product is going to come out correct also. And then another one I'd like to use as far as when I talk about current and modern methods like this is this one by Mr. Robert Zimmerman. You all may know Mr. Zimmerman from a 1964 song, My Back Pages, and it's a pretty popular song. It says pretty plainly to me how system solution development continues to evolve in using current and modern tools and techniques. Another motivational slide that I'd like to use is from, you all may remember this from the rock group Yes. The group Yes from 1971, they had a song called I've Seen All Good People, but this is a very good, I use this admonition a lot. I think it's becoming increasingly more important as we move into more stakeholder-centric system solution development. And I think many times we engineers and managers are maybe a little bit guilty of this, surrounding ourselves with ourselves, and so this is a good thing to remember as far as current and modern methods for initial project planning is one of the things right away. So you want to try to remember to not surround yourself with yourself. This one needs no introduction here, is someone needs no introduction. It does serve to reinforce the notion of making sure you understand the problem before striking off on the development of a system solution. So if I had an hour to solve a problem, I spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and only 5 minutes thinking about solutions. Lastly, on this, it's of course this quote has been attributed to a lot of people, but Winston Churchill was known to say it. We have run out of money. Now we have to think. And that's another motivation these days for using these current and modern methods. So as I mentioned, I do have a lot of material to go through today. Sometimes this is a sometimes days long workshop, but I'd like to be as interactive as possible. So again, unmute yourselves at any time to ask a question or make a comment. And then if you wouldn't mind, mute back after each time. note the QR code to the materials again in Dropbox there to the lower right. And so unless anybody has any questions right now, we can go ahead and get into the approach itself.
I guess with the Dropbox, I guess QR code, that's fine for putting it on my phone, but did you put that in the chat already? That
Yes, let's see. Mark, what's the first thing you see in chat, Mark? First thing at the very top. Because this is probably important to know for
no, I
Zoom.
just have a name.
Okay.
I think because I logged on a little late,
Yep.
I probably missed it. So
Yep. So I'm going to select that. What I want to do is I want to see if I can select that. I want to copy that, and I'm going to come down here. I'm going to paste it in.
resend it, I guess.
Right. Let me see something
Okay.
here. Let's see it. Okay. So did you get it that time? Now
Yes,
do
I
you
see
have
it. I see
Okay.
it
Well,
now.
that's a thing to remember. Lessons learned for everybody is, and sometimes you may see me put something in here more than once, and that's why I put something in there more than once, or why anybody would is so if you come in at different times, you don't see the same chat that everybody else sees, and so that's an important thing for all of us to know. But that's the URL that goes along with the QR code.
Okay. I mean, I did hit save for the chat, but I don't
Yep.
know if you captured that. But
No,
okay.
it wouldn't have. You would only be capturing, Mark, as you said before, you would only be capturing the chat as it was when you came in. Now,
Okay.
another thing is if you direct message somebody and somebody else saves the chat, they won't get those direct messages. But if you save your chat, then you'll see the direct message. So don't worry about that. If you direct message somebody and everybody else saves the chat, they only get the chat that involves them and the public. They don't get any chat that involves direct message between anybody. So that's I guess it goes without saying, but just to make sure that everybody understands that too. So
Okay, understood.
so let's move into the well, sorry, make sure that if anybody else has any questions. That's a good question there, Mark. All right, so let's move into the actual approach. So I want a little bit more back to this motivation thing here. So this cartoon here, which I think we've probably all seen before, sort of sums up my personal initial motivation for researching the subject of enhancing and improving initial project planning. I've used this slide and this cartoon in all of my talks and tutorials starting back in May of 2015 on the need for and the value of employing this kind of a hybrid initial project planning or IPP approach for any project to get it right from the start. So this cartoon, as you may see, you can't really see, but if you blow it up, the cartoon is dated 1997. It's almost 25 years old. But as we all know, that the problem or the issue is still around. And most recently, you may have seen this cartoon in the International Council on Systems Engineering Handbook version 4. They actually got permission from Scott Adams to actually use this to actually use this cartoon in the handbook because it is that relevant. A little bit more motivation. This is the first real slide that talks about what's going on with this initial project planning and the main motivation for it. This slide shows the primary principles of project development using Agile, in this case, Agile Scrum, which is iterative development for incremental delivery of value. Iterative development for incremental delivery of value is a basic principle behind Agile development. And again, sorry if I'm telling you stuff you already know, but the drawing shows Agile Scrum development iterations or sprints 1 through 6. But here's the problem or the issue. Every time I've shown this slide to project teams and classes, especially for the first time, someone has always been quick to ask the questions that I've noted on this slide. Who is this person or persons thinking about taking on this project? How did they come up with the project idea in the first place? What were their initial planning processes, that large curved arrow between the idea bubble and the Agile Scrum sprints? What were their initial planning processes? And where does that original background drawing in sprint 1 come from? Most of the literature says sprint 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, do the following, literature, but what, and many other engineering specifications and documents say do the following things, but they don't really say anything about the initial conditions or how you get to the start. How do you get to the starting point? So this workshop and this approach is really about how do you get to the starting point. So I figured there was value to be added in helping systems engineers, software engineers, and project managers work together on these initial project planning process steps. So here's some background on this approach that I'll be talking with you all today about the roles and responsibilities of systems engineers, software engineers, project managers, rapidly evolving. We all know that, rapidly evolving. So the purpose of this workshop is to acquaint everyone with some current and modern tools and techniques that can be used specifically in initial project planning of any system development lifecycle project. Some of the workshop information is based on information from volunteer project teams starting model-based systems engineering projects to develop reference models for microgrids and resilient hospitals. So one objective is to highlight the value of using best practices from things like the lean startup method, as well as agile systems engineering, agile software engineering, and agile project and program management to enhance and improve initial project planning. So an objective of using this approach is to help any project team develop an actionable set of project-focused mechanisms that they can easily reference throughout any solution development project, no matter what methodology they use for the project. That's an important distinction there. And as the slide says, the workshop information is going to be based a lot on IPP process steps used to start a microgrid reference model MBSE project in 2017, as well as a resilient hospital reference model project in 2018. This diagram is just a notional picture of the intersection of current and modern engineering and management methodologies from which I've derived this hybrid lean startup method and agile initial project planning or IPP approach. Now, this picture is not meant to show the amount of real overlap between any of these disciplines. It's also important to note, and I'll be repeating this, that no lean or agile expertise is needed for any project to use this IPP approach. The approach borrows best practices from each discipline, practices all project planners are already familiar with. Any project can use this IPP approach, no matter which methodologies are used later for development. So I think everybody can understand that, but sorry if I repeat that a few times as we go along.
Well, no need to be a Scrum Master before you enter into this.
No, but Mark, you brought up something a joke I used to tell in class. The difference between a good question, a very good question, and a great question. A good question means I don't know the answer. A very good question means I do know the answer. And a great question is the answer is on the next slide. And so what you've done there is you've teed up that we're going to be coming up to a slide that talks about the subject that you just brought up, Scrum Master. As everybody knows, basic makeup of an agile team is a product owner, a Scrum Master, and the development team. And just to put my own plug in there, I've been petitioning that they also add project manager to that team, separate from the product owner and the Scrum Master and the development team, but we'll see how far that gets. But I advocate, and also the fifth part of that is key stakeholder. A lot of the Agile people talk about the key stakeholder, but they don't emphasize that. So my plug here for the perfect Agile team is a good product owner, a good Scrum Master, a good project manager, and at least one good key stakeholder, and then the development team. So those are the makeups of a good Agile team for iterative development for incremental delivery of value. But we'll talk more about specifically about the part of the Agile team here in just a second. So another LSM and Agile for IPP motivational slide. This one talks about a legacy problem still faced by many engineers and managers. You know, we've all seen something like this before. So let's take another poll question here. Sort of put you on the spot a little bit here. The question is, which of the following do you know most about? Which of the following do you know most about? I mean, even if you know a lot about all of them or not so much about any of them, just go ahead and say which one do you know, which one do you know the most about of those things? So even if you don't know anything about either one of them, what I'm sort of putting you on the spot is you're going to find out that you know more about these things than you think you do, because we borrow from we borrow from each one of these, but that you're going to find out that they're processes that we've been using a lot all along. So we two out of three of us know more about Agile systems engineering than any of the rest of it, which is actually a good thing. But I'm going to be saying a few things about Agile systems engineering. I'm glad that you all brought that up. I'm going to be saying a few things about that here in a little bit. So thanks a lot for taking that poll. And again, I'll get the questions and the answers out to everybody. But it's important to understand here that it's important to understand that no lean or agile expertise is needed for any project to use this IPP approach. So here's where I'm going to go through a series of slides now to make sure that we all understand where in the different processes are we talking about using this IPP approach. So here's where the LSM and Agile for IPP approach would be used in the lean startup method development methodology. So if you choose a development methodology for later on, here's where this IPP approach would actually fit in that. So for example, if you were a startup or you were starting out and you really wanted to push the I believe button on the lean startup method, for example, then this is where, you know, we're talking about the approach being used in the product strategy and vision part of this before you move into the build, measure, learn feedback loop. And down there at the bottom, you can see the URL and for the really good 2011 book. Even though it's 2011, it's still very relevant as far as a lean startup is concerned. So for that methodology, you can see where this IPP approach would fit in. So here's where the approach fits in the traditional plan-driven waterfall development methodology as depicted in the systems engineering V that we're all used to seeing in ISO 15288, as well as the INCOSE handbook and the systems engineering body of knowledge. Up here on the left, you'll see that it does require business or mission analysis and stakeholder needs and requirements definition. So we're really big into the business and mission analysis part of it and the stakeholder needs part of it, and we overlap a lot. And I've been working very closely lately with the INCOSE requirements working group to as far as the overlap between the needs elicitation and needs analysis and the stakeholder needs elicitation, and where does that fit into the requirements analysis and requirements engineering and requirements documentation and requirements definition and specification, where it all fits. So just understand that I've been working very hard to make sure that this initial project planning approach does fit into that. And you can see that the requirement that the Resilient Hospital Reference Model, MBSE project, initial project planning and initial project execution makes use of this approach. And this is the V out of the Systems Engineering Handbook version that's back in 2016, but I guess volume 5 is going to come out pretty soon. Here's where the approach fits into the systems engineering body of knowledge. Key elements of systems engineering. You can see very clearly here that the systems engineer is meant to elicit the needs from the customer, and the customer provides needs, and then the systems engineer works with the development team. So this is very, and then you have the life cycle processes and stuff. So you can very clearly see here that there is a need for process steps for the approach and the process steps for initial project planning here, that where we're working mainly with the elicitation of needs and from the customers, also really these days called stakeholders, external and internal stakeholders. So that's where it would fit into the systems engineering body of knowledge. So here's where the NASA systems engineering engine, that facilitation of this hybrid IPP approach would be incorporated. Again, I got this illustration. It's a kind of an eye chart, but again, the benefit of Zoom is that everybody can just sort of look at this later or zoom in, and so not the eye chart things are not too much of a problem as they used to be if you're trying to read this from across the room or something. But I got this illustration from the NASA procedural requirements document, NPR 7123.1b, NASA systems engineering processes and requirements, which is a very good document, and especially in its updated form. And you can see the URL there at the bottom for the PDF, and then probably the updated systems engineering documents from NASA also. But this is where this process and approach fits into that process. Here's where the approach would be used in Agile systems engineering. That is, and this is an important point here, Agile systems engineering in this workshop and this context means systems engineering applied in Agile methodology. That means a systems engineer is part of the Agile project development team. So the systems engineer works with the product owner, works with the Scrum Master, works with the project manager, works with the systems development team as part of that team. Back in 2010, I was at the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory. I was one of the first systems engineers to actually work on a Scrum team. It was very eye-opening for systems engineering as far as that's concerned. But the use of the term Agile systems engineering here means strictly the role of systems engineering in the Agile methodology of iterative development for incremental delivery of value. So for example, this means that the systems engineer would be involved in the sprint meetings every day, the stand-up meetings. As you all may be familiar with sprint stand-up meetings, you have a very short meeting where they go around the room and everybody says, in the past 24 hours, I worked on this. In the coming 24 hours, I'm going to be working on this. I don't have any impediments. And then the next person says, the last 24 hours I worked on this, the next 24 hours I'm going to work on this. I don't have any impediments. And so a systems engineer would actually be in that meeting and say, okay, the last 24 hours I worked on these systems engineering type tasks. Today I'm going to work on these systems engineering type tasks. I don't have any impediments, that type of thing. So that the systems engineer actually as part of the Agile systems engineering team that's doing iterative development for incremental delivery of value. It's not meant to reflect the methods being used to make systems engineering more agile or systems engineering in an agile development environment. One of the main themes of the INCOSE Agile Systems Engineering Working Group, and they're quick to tell you that there's sort of a difference between systems engineering agility, which is what the INCOSE Systems Engineering Working Group is about. The difference between systems engineering agility and a systems engineer actually being part of a software intensive project development team. that's using Agile. So for this type of Agile systems engineering, I'd recommend two books by a PhD, the last name Douglas, Douglass. He's got down here at the bottom, you see here a model-based systems engineering, Agile systems engineering book that he wrote a couple of years ago, 2017. But he has a new book that's coming out now that's actually that refers to Agile MBSE. It's not out yet. You can pre-order it from Amazon. It'll be published and it'll be available in March. But it is a book on how to apply model-based systems engineering when you're part of an Agile development team. And so that's what I mean by Agile systems engineering here. So here's where in the normal.
Excuse me, and you say that
Please,
book's
Mark.
going to be coming out soon?
Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, if you do a search on Douglas, Douglass, do a search on Douglas and then Agile MBSE, you should get it. I've pre-ordered mine. Yeah, so you should find information on it now.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
One of the things that I meant to tell you is at the end of this workshop, there's a sort of a handout. One of the slides is also a handout of a series of QR codes that point to different pieces of information. And one of them is a QR code that will take you to his website, Douglas's website, where he explains all of his ideas about Agile systems engineering that he got while he was at IBM. So do make use of that site. Will have a lot more and better information on Agile systems engineering as he applied it at IBM. And I'll talk about his new book too. So here's where in the normal Agile, when I say Agile, I always make a distinction between different methodologies in Agile. And I usually reference Scrum, Agile Scrum, lifecycle development, where this IPP approach would be incorporated. And you can clearly see there is a vision part, and there is something that's called the product backlog. And so you'll notice here what I always have been finding in the literature, that the literature says there's the vision, there's the product backlog. Now from there, you're going to have a sprint planning meeting, and you're going to do a bunch of things, and off you go. Well, everybody asks, well, where does the product backlog come from? Where does the vision come from, and where does the product backlog come from? So that's really what this initial project planning is all about. Is to help everybody understand that as far back on the systems engineering V as you may go, as far back as any of the literature takes you, there still seems to be a bit of hand waving and assumption that something has already been done. And so this initial project planning is to help you get that part off on the right foot. And so once you've done this IPP, you'll have the vision and you'll have the building blocks that are called the product backlog. And then from there, you can do what it says to do here. You can incorporate the vision, you can take the product backlog, you can prioritize it, and away you go, if you decide to go that way for your development. But even if you don't decide to go that way for your development, the project focus mechanisms that you get from this workshop can be used in a waterfall, plan driven, can be used in lean, can be used in Agile, can be used in all the rest of them. There's still a clear handoff and value to the beginning of any project.
Okay, I do have a question here.
Of course.
Maybe even the next slide might show it too, but what I'm seeing, since this is so early, we might not even have a development team yet at this point. In other words, I would think we were working more with a couple of the major stakeholders, a project manager, maybe perhaps, as well as the system engineer, like myself, or yourself, to sit down and start formulating enough to come up with, like you said, maybe the outputs, the product, backlog to start with. But I almost don't see a Scrum Master or anybody else yet, because this is like pre-decisional almost, if that's the right word.
Yep.
that, you know, people are mulling around on this, et cetera, and trying to come up with, you know, boundaries of what they think the project should do and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So I think I'm on target saying that, correct?
Yes, you are. And as a matter of fact, I need to tell everybody else that it really looks like I'm paying Mark to do all of this, but I'm not. But what he is he's really doing what I think everybody here is doing. He's saying, wait a minute, so what would, you know, you're already getting good ideas in your mind that how are you going to do this and who's going to do this? So just keep going back to that first that slide that shows all the Mona Lisas being done there, and you see that that stuff on the left side. Who is that that's coming up with this idea? What and how do those people get together and so on and so forth? That's what this workshop is all about. And I hope to show you who does that, where do they do it, and how do they do it. This, as the good term that Mark uses, is pre-decisional stuff as far as the project itself is concerned. That's what this workshop is about, is to how to outfit yourselves with the right people and the right tools and techniques to conduct this pre-decisional type work. That's really, it literally is what this workshop is all about, is how do you come up with those people and how do they do this part that is so far to the left of this project development. Back here where it said project inception and planning, that's really that part of it is really what this workshop is all about. And then you can get into Agile if you want to, or you can get into plan-driven waterfall, you can get into lean, you can get into whatever other methodologies you want to use. But all of this pre-decisional type work and information will still be useful. So here's where the Agile approach would be used as part of Agile project or product management. And so note the URL and QR code here with a link to more information about on Agile project management. The best person, and again, at the end of the slide deck is another handout with a bunch of QR codes in it, which are all these QR codes to all this information again in one place. A good person as far as this is concerned is Mr. Roman Pichler, Pichler. You can see the URL there. He's very good. I think he's German, but he's very good at incorporating good tools and techniques as far as Agile project management is concerned. And as you all know, in the International Council on Systems Engineering, we're trying much harder to integrate to integrate work between the systems engineers and software engineers and the project and program managers. To the approach itself. So this hybrid LSM, Lean Startup Method and Agile, IPP approach is meant to be accomplished in 3 main stages: meetup, cleanup, and post-up. All of this meetup, cleanup, and post-up takes place really prior to the development part of the project starting up. This is the pre-decisional part of it. Now I'll talk about all 3 phases, but the bulk of the workshop will emphasize the meetup phase, the initial getting the information from the stakeholders and the decision makers. So the full approach is meetup, cleanup, and post-up. So here's a quick example of an LSM Agile for IPP meetup artifact. You can easily see that it's a product of affinity mapping and brainstorming that we already know how to do very well. So there's nothing new here. Here's an example of a cleanup artifact. That means that we've taken these sticky notes and we put them into a matrix like this as far as for briefing and for sharing with other folks. And this is a template-based matrix. Just wanted to show you an example of a best practice borrowed from Lean Startup and Agile Project Management that again uses project planning tools and techniques that we're all familiar with. And you'll the materials I put a couple of fillable PDFs, which are these templates and so on for as far as cleanup is concerned. And here's an example of the Meetup and cleanup artifacts posted up for project sharing in an example repository-based collaboration environment like Dropbox. Other possible post-up project collaboration environments include the new Microsoft Teams, which the International Council on Systems Engineering is starting to work much more with, SharePoint, which we're familiar with, Basecamp, which some of you may be familiar with, and another suite of tools by an Australian company called Atlassian. They use the tool Confluence for this type of thing. So some of you may already be using the Atlassian tools of Jira and Confluence and Trello as far as project development and project management is concerned. But those are just examples of some of the places where you can post up this information. So Meetup, get the information in raw data, clean up to where you can put it into Microsoft Office or some of these matrices and so on to share them and brief them. And then those Meetup and cleanup artifacts can be posted up into a more shareable collaborative environment. So here's a list of examples of artifacts that are created during the Meetup, cleanup, and post up stages of this IPP approach. It's important to repeat here that no special tools are needed to conduct a successful IPP meetup. No special tools are needed. All of the steps can be accomplished using brainstorming and affinity mapping type tools and techniques and software tools that we're already used to using. So for example, if you have this meetup, the artifacts are going to be whiteboard or glass board, and then you take pictures of the whiteboard and glass board. And then you have flip charts and flip chart pictures. You have sticky notes and sticky note pictures, and then handwritten pages and page pictures. So again, borrowing from Agile, one of the things that even the government has adopted now is if you're using an Agile development process, what they refer to as contract deliverables or CDRLs. CDRLs now include pictures instead of PowerPoint and Visio and some of the more formal type artifacts. The contract deliverable, it's good enough to do something like this, and then take a picture of that. And if it's clear enough, then that's referred to in Agile as a definition of done. If it's done well enough that somebody can use it at the next steps or the next gateway or something like that, then there's no need to formalize it in any other way. But you can formalize it or clean it up in something like this, and then you post it up in something like that. So the cleanup artifacts include the whiteboard pictures. You make them into files, a PDF, Office tools, and that type of thing. Chart pictures to files, sticky notes to files, handwritten pictures to files. So you really take it from the physical world into the digital world. That's really the main thing you do with cleanup now. And then post up, the artifacts include the files that are stored and managed and shared in those repository-based collaboration tools like Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, Dropbox, Confluence, that type of thing. Basecamp, those types of things. And this is the foot stomp. This is a foot stomp main takeaway from the workshop. Is this slide right here, which of course you can print out from the materials, but this is the main takeaway right here. Here's what the hybrid LSM Agile approach is all about. The stakeholder-centric collaborative development of these 7 project-focused mechanisms that you see here. This slide provides a one-page explanation of all 7 of these project-focused mechanisms. To collaboratively create these and then proactively refer to them throughout the project development, and you can be assured of a fairly successful project life cycle. So what we're going to go over today is we're going to go over these phases that you see on the left here, just naming them. And then we're going to go through an explanation of these project-focused mechanisms, these 7 project-focused mechanisms. And you can see here what best practice they draw from. You don't have to be experts in any of these areas. It just draws best practices from these areas. And it just happens to be the best practices that we all already know how to use. So if you go into Agile You'll need to learn more about Agile if you go into Agile development. Same thing with Lean Startup or Lean or any of the other development methodologies. And you, of course, you'll want to take on the more detailed aspects of that. But for initial project planning, we just use certain best practices from there, and their practices we're all very familiar with. So this slide shows a workflow on how the LSM Agile IPP Meetup steps were accomplished for the Resilient Hospital Reference Model MBSE project. So I'll make another shameless plug here for Lucid Charts. And Lucid Charts, all one word, lucidchart.com is a free tool that you may already know about as far as building certain data flow diagrams, functional flow diagrams, and stuff like this. And the reason there, and so the microgrid reference model and the Resilient Hospital reference model projects both were very proactive in trying to use these free online tools. And the reason they do is because they understand this idea of stakeholder-centric engineering and management. They found out very early on from their microgrid and healthcare stakeholders, key stakeholders, that budgets were very tight for buying and learning any for-fee software tools. And so another important point here is during stakeholder-centric initial project planning, IPP, the advice is to use what the stakeholders use, or use tools that are the most easy for them to get and use. Then during development, you can use whatever tools you're most comfortable with, UML, SML, SysML, LDL, BPMN, all those different types of tools that we use, as long as you remember when you go back to get them verified and validated, that your stakeholders understand them. In initial project planning and initial project execution, and you want to keep your stakeholders involved as much as possible, you want the stakeholders to actually use the tools with you. So in that case, if you can stick with Microsoft Office and you can stick with the free tools that are out there and don't have a very big learning curve, you can get you can be assured of a more solid handoff between initial project planning and initial project execution if you've involved your stakeholders if you've been proactive in involving your stakeholders in actually working with you to create the artifacts and keep them involved as much as possible. The red dotted area on this slide shows a very simplistic view of what's being accomplished with this approach. At the IPP meetup, a facilitator leads a small team of project decision makers through the LSM Agile IPP process of capturing, vetting, and recording at an abstract and high level data and information about the project and its expected outcomes. The captured, vetted, and recorded project outcomes, data, and information, the primary outcomes of the IPP meetup, will be codified into a set of 7 project focus mechanisms. That's a green box on the upper right. The meetup 7 project focus mechanisms will later be cleaned up, then posted up as actionable and traceable references for the duration of the project lifecycle development effort. Now, the rest of this slide, outside of the red dotted area, shows ways that the output from the LSM Agile IPP meetup cleanup and post-up process might be used as input for further model-based systems engineering work. And the beginning of that is referred to as initial project execution work. And then the product of that will be refined capabilities, processes, scenarios, use cases, epic user stories. And then the Resilient Hospital reference model is using that information to work with the stakeholders, keeping the stakeholders involved in what's referred to as model-based concept definition. One thing that the Resilient Hospital MBSE team is doing is it's saying MBSE is model-based full systems engineering V, not just part of the V, but all parts of the systems engineering V just put in from document-based to model-based. And so including requirements analysis, requirements engineering, architecture, architectural design, concept definition, all of that is they try to make that model-based also. And for model-based concept definition, they're working with the stakeholders with a free tool based on the ISO standard 19450, which is referred to as Object Process Methodology, or OPM. And so they're using OPM, which is a free tool that you can download off the internet. It's called OPCAT, OPCAT, and it's 4.2. You can download that onto your computer, and it gives you a model-based concept definition capability. It looks like SysML Lite is what it looks like, but it's actually based on a real ISO specification now, 19450, or Object Process Methodology. And then what they hope to do, that's going to give them the high level product or service concept models. But the reason they're using that, it's a free tool, doesn't take up much computer space. You can download it and you can work directly with your stakeholders, and the stakeholders see themselves in this model-based, what we call model-based systems engineering. They don't need to know any of that. They just know that, oh, this is what you mean by model-based, and so it's working real well with the stakeholders so far. And then after that, once they have the high-level product or service concept models, then they can start. They hope to incorporate the OPM work with other SysML work and UML work that's out there now. Anybody that's familiar with the Object Management Group, or OMG, the OMG is actively trying right now to build API bridges between these different tools. So to keep that model-based systems engineering methodology going through the entire life cycle. And if you decide to go iterative development for incremental delivery of value, then you'll start to learn about this idea of minimum viable products. And I don't know if anybody here is working with MVPs already, but minimum viable products is what is the result of each iteration for incremental delivery of value. You come up with what's referred to as a minimum viable product. And if it works, if the stakeholder validates it and verifies it, then this cycle is complete, and you just keep refining it as you go along. But the part for the IPP part is a part inside that red dotted area. Back to the agile process steps, a slide that I showed earlier. As part of this hybrid LSM agile approach, it's important to bring together at the IPP meetup as many project perspectives as possible as the initial project planning IPP team. I'll call them the IPP team from now on. The IPP team is shown here as that character inside the red dotted circle who has the idea for the project in the first place. The organization thinking about taking on a project should begin by trying to identify ahead of time the right IPP meetup attendees or IPP team members. The project idea should also be socialized among these potential IPP team members. The IPP team and the project idea will be fleshed out during the IPP meetup as the first 2 of 7 project focus mechanisms. So here's more information about choosing the right IPP team members. They should be people who can speak about the project idea and expected project outcomes, and also to identify stakeholder groups that'll have equities in project resourcing work and outcomes. It is possible that some of the IPP team members will also be leaders or members of stakeholder groups, and that'll be determined in approach steps at the IPP meetups. It's important that the IPP team be able to talk at the very abstract outcomes or expected capabilities level for this project, because the expected capabilities is the primary output for this IPP, the expected capabilities. From there, expected capabilities can be moved into use cases and scenarios and features, and they can be parsed into requirements and all of that. But the expected capabilities at the very high system level is really the primary output of IPP. if possible, before the first IPP meetup. Identify potential IPP team members and socialize the project idea among these potential IPP team members. At the first IPP meetup, the IPP team can be confirmed or refined, and project idea will be refined into the project title and purpose, which we'll get to in just a minute. Now, to get the right number of IPP meetup attendees, you might use the Jeff Bezos and Amazon 2 pizza rule. As Jeff Bezos used to say, the team shouldn't be any bigger than if you slide 2 pizzas under the door, that's how big the team should be. So basically, it's the same as the old 7 ± 2 rule that we already know about as far as these integrated product teams are concerned, or agile teams are concerned, or any kind of team that needs to offsite teams that need to make these decisions. And in this case, the initial project planning team should maybe follow this 2 pizza rule or the 7 ± 2 rule. And the QR code there has more information about this Bezos 2 pizza rule, if anybody wants to know more about that. So we're talking about going back to that lucid chart flow. We're talking about this part of the IPP workflow that I showed before. Determine the workshop attendees, and you'll come up with the workshop attendees list. So one way to arrive at the right level for LSM IPP team members borrows from Agile Scrum, as Mark already mentioned, Agile Scrum product owner roles and responsibilities as shown on this slide, and the URL down at the lower right there for quickscrum.com. Now, that's not to say that it can't also be a high-powered Scrum Master, but definitely the product owner, as you can see here, responsible for the product success, own the product or on behalf of the business owners, maintain stakeholder vision while developing the product, guide the project in the correct direction. It's supposed to be a good team player, collaborates with the development team and the stakeholders, and cares about user needs and business goals. So the main takeaway from this slide is the people at the IPP team should be able to look in 3 directions and talk in 3 directions. They need to be able to look that their normal roles and responsibilities require them to look out to external stakeholders. They interface with external stakeholders, so they look out. It requires them to look in. They routinely work with the development team, so they're looking in. And it requires them to look up. It means that they are familiar with the organization's vision and strategy. So the people at the IPP team and the IPP meetup should be people that are able to brainstorm out about the external stakeholders, in about the internal stakeholder groups that are actually going to be doing the development, and up as far as the organization is concerned. Those are the people that should be at the small number of people that should be at the IPP meetup. Another way to arrive at the right level for the IPP team members borrows from the project management body of knowledge, a program management body of knowledge known as a PMBOK, and the roles of project managers or program managers. You can see from the PMBOK here, you can see that those people are responsible for looking out to the customer and external stakeholders, looking into the internal stakeholders in the organization that are involved in the development, and because they're going to resource those people, and looking up. They are the people that are responsible for understanding the organization's vision and strategy and goals. Now, it's important to note here, lead engineers, Scrum Masters, lead systems engineers, and so on. For example, if you have a program manager as a project planner and a project manager as part of the development team, so lead engineers, project managers, Scrum Masters can also be part of an IPP team, as long as part of their regular roles and responsibilities include working directly with stakeholders, looking out to transform needs, problems, and issues into expected outcomes and expected capabilities, not the specific potential solutions. So anyone that has normal role and responsibility of looking out with the customer, in with the development team, and up as far as the organization is concerned, those people are more than capable of doing the steps in initial project planning to get these projects off on the right foot. Back to the and so what I want to do here is this is as far as my practice and rehearsal and stuff is concerned, this for a 3-hour tutorial or workshop, this is probably the best place to have a break. Before we get into the next part of it, it'll probably be a good time for a break here. Let's say it's 10:15 now. Let's start back up again. No later than 10:25. We're going to start back up again. Okay, so I'm going to pause. I guess what we'll do is I'm going to pause the recording. Right. Go ahead. Oh, I wanted to. So you started your recording, right?
I did. You might want to start yours.
Yeah, this meeting is being recorded by continuing. Okay, let's see. So now I'm going to go back and resume my recording. Thanks. Now, when you started your recording, I got a prompt that says that you were doing that. Now, when I resume my recording, do you get a prompt saying that I did that?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, either way, I just pressed to continue on yours, and it went okay. Before I go back off again, as far as my video is concerned, I wanted to show everybody the book that we're talking about here. Let's see, back it up. This is on the recording, I guess. So this is a book that I was talking about by Jordan Tusinoff, as far as the systems engineering for all is concerned. But let's get back into the tutorial of the workshop now. Where we left off was lead engineers can be a part of any IPP team, as long as the part of their regular roles and responsibilities includes working directly with stakeholders to transform needs, problems, and issues into expected outcomes and expected capabilities, and not the specific potential solutions. So now it's time for the actual meetup to take place, and for the attendees to develop together or to confirm the first project focus mechanism from those 7 that I showed you before. The first one is called Project Perspectives. It's also referred to as the HATS, H-A-T-S, the HATS. So the most successful LSM Agile meetups will be the ones that are facilitated. It really does detract from IPP meetup productivity, efficiency, and effectiveness to have any of the IPP team, who should all be participating, try to facilitate the IPP meetup. For what it's worth, I found that we senior engineers and managers are also very good at facilitation. It's one reason that I joined the International Association of Facilitators, and the QR code handout at the end of the slide deck has a link to the International Association of Facilitators. It's okay if the facilitator later on is on the development team. Just try to avoid them being part of the IPP team during IPP meetups. They'll be the facilitator, but not the participant. At the start of the IPP meetup, the facilitator will lead the meetup attendees in a flip chart exercise to determine if the right IPP meetup hats are in fact in attendance, or if the hats need to be modified in any way. And I'm going to describe those hats here in just a second. So what we're doing is this part of the workflow here. We're developing PFM1, the project decision level perspectives, or HATs. This slide shows in workflow form how LSM Agile IPP meetup attendees, or the IPP team, might be identified and chosen or refined as far as. So you have an idea or a need. The idea or the need is socialized. It's floated as a product or a service. Decision makers are identified, people that routinely look out, in, and up. Decision makers are identified and invited to a product or service initial project planning IPP meetup. Now, the other thing that's not mentioned here that I just mentioned is, and is you need to have those people, the 7 plus or minus 2 pizza amount of people that understand the problem and have normal daily looking out, looking in, and looking up roles and responsibilities. But they also need to, you also need to identify a facilitator. So identify the people that are going to participate as the IPP team, but also identify separately from that a good facilitator. So you're going to have the initial project planning IPP meetup. It gets organized, and then it gets facilitated, and the project focus mechanisms are developed as a group. And so the first one you come up with is the project perspectives, or hats, are confirmed or developed or refined at this beginning of this IPP meetup. So the way that we did it was, we actually used the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab classroom. And in that classroom, we had glass boards, flip charts, and that type of thing, mainly glass board and flip chart. And of course, we had the ability to project presentations. So we projected presentations, we had a glass board, and we had flip charts, and we had and we had sticky notes. So we had sticky notes. So that's the outfit for a live IPP is those things: sticky notes, flip chart, glass board, computer projection capability. So add LSM Agile for IPP meetup project focus mechanism number 1, or the hats or IPP perspectives. You may hear me use the term hats throughout this. For this IPP approach, it's important to bring together at the meetup as many project perspectives as possible as the initial project planning or IPP team. One way to do this is a very loose derivation of the 6 thinking hats exercise designed by Edward de Bono. And that QR code down at the lower right there will point you back to his information. When assigning these hats, some people might be asked to stretch, that is, to choose a hat that might not be their exact real-life role. The objective is to make sure as many primary project perspectives as possible are represented throughout the IPP meetup itself. So here's some examples of the hats for a cross-discipline team system solution project IPP meetup. And you can imagine that you have, we have project managers, systems engineers, software engineers. You can have, product owners, program managers, but you want to have, if you can have representation from the actual stakeholders who have expectations in the project, customer, user, sponsor, that kind of thing, that's good. But sometimes a company will say, well, we don't really plan our projects with looking external. We don't involve external stakeholders in our initial project planning. There could be a whole lot of reasons for that. That's why you need people at the IPP meetup whose roles regularly have them interfacing with the externals. They regularly talk with sponsors, they regularly talk with customers, they regularly talk with users. If they do, then at the IPP meetup, they could be a project manager, they could be a lead engineer, lead software engineer, program manager, product owner, Scrum Master. If those people have been routinely working or looking outward, then even in an inside IPP, they should be able to effectively talk for the external customer. That's what you need at an IPP. Is you need somebody to talk about the expectations of the external stakeholders, as well as the internal stakeholders, as well as the organization strategy and vision. So here's a cleanup version of an IPP meetup flip chart, and you can exercise that I facilitated so that the microgrid reference model IPP team could collaboratively confirm they were starting off with project insights from the right perspective. That means a vetted PFM1 or a vetted set of hats. And so you can see there for the microgrid reference model project, you had people in the room ready to fill out the sticky notes, ready for me to write on the glass board, and ready for me to write on the flip chart, representatives of these people: project lead, system integrator, a consumer, producer, customer, infrastructure, engineers, and ops manager. And so here's the cleanup of a list of PFM1 hats or decision level perspectives arrived at, actually refined during the 3 LSM Agile IPP meetups for the Resilient Hospital Reference Model project, for the 3 meetups that we had April through September of 2018. These are the people that were able to speak for external stakeholders, internal stakeholders, and organizational strategy and goals. So these are the people, these are the representatives that were there. I mean, the representatives that were represented, let's say. Now, for the benefit of the 3 Resilient Hospital Reference Model meetups, we actually had some of these real people: chief medical officer, hospital emergency manager. We didn't have them all at once and for all 3, but we had them for enough of them that we could, the rest of us could take on the roles of these people, through the other 2 meetups. And so we were able to give all of the inputs as if we were one of these people. So if you can't have the exact stakeholders that you decision maker level stakeholders there, then just try to make sure that the people that are there know these people well enough to where they could talk to their equities as you move through the meetup, because that's really what it's all about, is to capture the problems and the issues and the expectations of the stakeholders. You know, where it says stakeholder needs elicitation, customer needs elicitation, all these things that we see at the upper left part of the V, the beginning of the Agile Scrum, all of these people that are supposed to be represented or get needs elicitation from at the beginning of these different methodologies. That's the people that we need to be able to talk for when we're at these meetups. So that was the result of the Flipboard at the Flipboard type sessions that we had for PFM1. At the end of the Flipboard session, you put this big flip chart that has an adhesive background to it. You put that up on the wall, and it stays there for the rest of the meetup. So everybody says, okay, what role am I taking on? And they can continue to focus on what role they were taking on, because that's what these project focus mechanisms are all about, is that you keep going, you can easily go back to them and stay focused on what it is you're supposed to be doing. And so this focus mechanism is even important while you're making the 7 focus mechanisms that the development team is going to use for the rest of the project. Even while you're making those 7 focus mechanisms, you need to have the previous focus mechanisms always readily available to you to stay in scope and stay focused. So the next LSM, the next IPP meetup step that we're going to talk about is where the PFM1 hats use the socialized project idea to develop together, the project focus mechanism number 2, the project title and purpose statements. That's the project focus mechanism number 2. Here, and so we're at this part of the workflow there, developing a project focus mechanism number 2, the project title and purpose statements. This is an eye chart you're not supposed to read. This is a handout in the materials. This is an 8.5 by 11 handout in the materials. There's 2 copies of this. There's an adult one and a student one. Adult meaning parent and teacher, and the student one for a shorter amount of time. But this is a tool. This is a tool to help facilitate IPP meetup PFM number 2. I use a current and modern system engineering best practice, systems thinking. specifically systems thinking roundtable guides developed by Dr. Sue Gabriel and the INCOSE System Science Working Group. This guide is included in the workshop materials. So the first one was a flip chart type, and we've got this flip chart on the wall, and everybody knows what role they're playing. That's number one. Now, number two is those roles are going to try to come up with a focus mechanism called the project title and the project purpose statement. So I facilitate a two-step roundtable and flip chart exercise with the IPP team for this particular process step. First, I facilitate a systems thinking roundtable session with everyone using the systems thinking roundtable guide that you see here. The objective is to give every IPP team member the same amount of time to express their thoughts on the socialized project idea. And so another tool that I use is a free tool. It's called Otter, OTT.ai. I'm going to put that in the in the chat there. Otter.ai. Otter.ai is a free tool that will capture conversation as a .txt file. It is speech to text is what it is. And so what I do is I have my phone and I call up with an internet connection and I call up my account on Otter.ai, and I literally can put the phone in front of somebody when they're talking. And when they talk, the projector actually shows the transcript as they're talking. And so every person that talks actually shows up as part of a .txt file that's being projected, just as if I was writing it by taking dictation on the whiteboard. And so that's what you get from this is everybody talks, everybody says what they want to say about the project title and the project purpose statement, but you capture it as a .txt file, so where you can use it later on. A bunch of my research at the laboratory was trying to figure out how the military can capture all of the conversations that take part in an operations center. You can imagine all the things that get yelled back and forth at an operations center. Schwarzkopf at Desert Storm actually said 85% of the decisions I made were based on what I heard my junior officers and my officers yelling back and forth in the operations center. But how do you capture that? How in the world do you capture something like that for reconstruction and reuse and so on? So now it's getting way better, and this AI-based tool called Otter will actually capture the conversation and put it into a TXT file where you can parse it just like you would any other piece of unstructured data. So it's getting a lot better. So I capture the unstructured talk of everybody around the room and what they want to say about the project title and the purpose. I capture all of that using Otter AI. But you can also just let them talk. If you don't have Otter AI, just let them all talk, and then you get your flip charts out again or your whiteboard out again, and you say, after you completed the systems thinking roundtable, then use a captured narrative or just get the flip charts back out again on the whiteboard and try to come up with a consensus project title and purpose. Because sometimes what happens when you have everybody talk around the room in an equal amount of time, somebody's bound to say, well, that's what I think, and so on and so forth. So you can neck it down fairly easily into what you might be able to accomplish on the whiteboard or the flip chart, as far as if we want the development team to have as a focus mechanism the title of this project and the purpose of this project, what do we want that to be? And so these PFM1 hats are able to do that. So here's a look at the results of this roundtable exercise and flip chart exercise with a microgrid reference model IPP team agreed on PFM2, the project title and project purpose statements. And here's the results of this roundtable exercise with the resilient hospital reference model IPP team agreed on PFM2, the project title and project purpose statements. So the title is an adaptable resilient hospital reference model development. That's the project title. And the project purpose is to enable, that is generically model, essential hospital capabilities under long-term loss of power. which is really what the Resilient Hospital Reference Model is. Their first set of deliverables is modeling the resilience of a hospital if the power goes out for a long period of time. And now again, I've included an example systems thinking roundtable guide in the workshop materials. So that's number one. The IPP team is number one. Number two is that IPP team coming up with a project title and a project purpose statement that can be used throughout the project.
Hey, Mike, I have
Please.
a question. The systems thinking roundtable templates and methodology and stuff, you don't have to have a license for using that
No.
or anything.
No, it is open.
Okay.
And a good question. And again, Dr. Sue Gabriel out of the INCOSE LA chapter is responsible for and the System Science Working Group. I think James Martin leads that. Is in charge of the development of the Systems Thinking Roundtable Guide, and she uses it. Well, a lot of people use it. It's getting to be routine now at the International Council on Systems Engineering, international workshops, IW, and international symposia, IS, at the beginning of every day, literally between 7 and 8 in the morning, is this roundtable, systems thinking roundtable sessions. They have them at the beginning of every day now. And and so that it's getting to be a pretty regular thing at the IW and IS. So now we're going to move from the introductory phase. We just went through an introductory phase, as it's called. Introductory phase is confirming you've got the right hats there, and the hats say, okay, here's our project title and project purpose statement we're going to use until circumstances force us to change it, which is, that's always a possibility that you'll change it down the road. But these people should know enough to say, okay, we've already agreed that this is the idea, and this is the purpose of doing it. So now we're going to move from the introductory phase to the problem validation phase of the approach. From the introductory phase to the problem validation phase. The main artifact of this phase is the third PFM, the product or project vision board extended, borrowing from Agile project management, but Agile project management expertise is not required. It borrows from LSM and Agile project management best practices, but neither one, the expertise in those are not required. They're just planning steps that we're already familiar with. For those who might not already be familiar with the Lean Startup method, also known as Lean Launchpad project planning methodology, here's some introductory information. It's also called Lean Launchpad. It's a philosophy and methodology based on 1980s lean manufacturing. It's a learnable, shareable, stakeholder-centric method to quickly and iteratively start to develop a new product or service or update existing products or services. Developed in its current form by American entrepreneur Eric Ries, founder and CEO now of the Long-Term Stock Exchange. And Eric Ries was a former student of Steve Blank at Stanford, who pioneered the Lean Startup movement with his customer development concept. The Lean Startup method is used by many startup companies, but I've found that best practices from LSM are also useful to start out any project. Start up a project, start out a project. Understanding stakeholders and stakeholder feedback are at the center of successful use of LSM and Agile for IPP. Again, it's an actual process to do that stakeholder elicitation that all of the different pieces of literature assume has been done when you move into a development methodology. So this is a way to actually apply strict and systems engineering type rigor to that part of the development of the process. So IPP produces expected outcomes, not potential solutions. That's what the Lean Startup and the IPP is all about. And another thing to keep in mind here, The lean startup method, or LSM, is not the same as lean or agile engineering. It is not. You may be reading about lean engineering and agile engineering. LSM is not that. The LSM approach overlaps with many lean concepts, but is specifically meant as an IPP methodology. The results can most certainly enhance the productivity of any project that later decides to follow lean or agile methods. This slide lists some of the URLs for information on who specifically in government and industry is using lean startup method for initial project planning. So you can see here, it came initially in the government from the National Science Foundation. They call it Innovation Corps or ICOR. Organizations like the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NSA, NGA, NSA, ONR, State Department, and have all adapted the NSF Innovation Corps methodologies. And NASA, they actually call the Innovation Corps, NSF Innovation Corps, they refer to it as FedTech. And so that's their use of the lean startup as far as innovation and startup of their different projects are concerned. And here's some companies that are also using the lean startup as far as case studies are concerned. So here again is a simple flow diagram reviewing how the PFM1 hat and the PFM2 title and purpose statements are leveraged by the IPP team to develop together the next project focus mechanism, the product or project vision board extended. You're not meant to, you're not meant to be able to read this right now, but this is in the the fillable PDF of this is part of the materials. So what you're doing with at the IPP for PFM3, this PVBE, what you're doing is involves the IPP team leveraging the first two PFMs, project focus mechanisms, to develop and validate together this problem and vision on how to approach the project, product or service outcomes, not specific solutions. So this is where the IPP team does the looking up. The capturing the stakeholders, which we're going to get to here in a minute, is the looking out and looking in part. But this project focus mechanism number 3 involves them capturing together their experience on the looking up part in the organization's strategy, vision, and goals. So they can capture that now as a project focus mechanism for the rest of the development team and the rest of the development lifecycle. So inputs come from the first two focus mechanisms and from experience-based insights from all of the various IPP team perspectives. This is where the IPP team starts full-blown whiteboard-based affinity mapping style structured brainstorming. The main output from this process step is the third vetted IPP focus mechanism, the project vision board extended. Now remember, product throughout this workshop, product and project are the same. It's a best practice borrowed from lean startup method and agile project management. And a lot of times when you borrow from the project management, as you know, they talk in terms of product, but product and project is interchangeable here, and it always will be. And so what you're doing with the project vision board, what you're doing with the project vision board extended is you're filling out a template. You're filling out a template answering the questions in each one of these blocks. And it's also important to understand that these are tailorable. For example, where it says vision here, vision is actually PFM2. What is your purpose statement? The purpose statement goes there. So there's the link back to PFM2. The link back to PFM1 is always going to be there. It's because it's the PFM1 hats that are doing all of these other things. So the link, making sure that all of those roles get to give input and so on. So PFM1 is constantly being referred back to and focused on during the creation of the 7 project focus mechanism. And then you'll see that the previous focus mechanisms are always referred back to for the next focus mechanism. So what this team is doing now is they're answering these questions, and these blocks here, based on your organization, can be business oriented, mission oriented, you know, that type of thing. That's why I put into the materials, I put in these fillable PDFs that can be tailored. And I put in a briefing there that talks about the difference between something like a lean canvas and a business mission and a business mission canvas, a BMC and a lean canvas. So those tools that are out there are available as far as the cleanup and the post up is concerned. And what you're doing in the meetup is everybody on the meetup team has this as a handout. They have this as a handout, but what they're doing is they're doing this on the glass board or the whiteboard. So I've drawn this great big guy here. I draw it on the whiteboard or the chalkboard or the glass board, and they have this in their hands that have these questions right here. And so we can go through, I can go through and facilitate them talking about, well, I think the target group ought to be called something else. Needs should be called something else. Product should be called something else. Business should be mission, for example. And you can tailor all of these, and then you can facilitate them actually being done on a glass board like that. So this is a picture. This is a meetup artifact. This is a meetup artifact. This is a meetup input. This is a meetup reference input, I guess you would call them. We have input, process, and output, and you know, that type of thing. This is the reference or the governance that they use to actually do the work, and this is the work that they do, a facilitated work that they do. So this is a picture of the glassboard based brainstorming workshop that created that PVBE for the microgrid reference model MBSE project. And believe it or not, I mean, these workshops can go on for 3 to 6 hours in multiple days, but you'd be surprised at how, if you have the right people in the room, how quickly they can come up with these bullets here. This is in a single 3-hour or 6-hour workshop that they really created these kind of things on an offsite type workshop. So they're really you know, able to march through those questions and come up with these ideas fairly quickly. So even though this slide is an impossible eye chart, I use it to show how quickly and thoroughly an IPP team can actually agree on, then capture useful and vetted information about a project problem and the IPP team's vision on the kind of solution to address the problem. At no point during the meetup do the hats try to design the solution, even though as decision makers, one or more of them might have something in mind. Everything has to be kept at the bulletized abstract. Everything is bullets. Everything is at an abstract level at the IPP.
Okay,
so here, please.
Got a quick question. Now, when you hand out that the previous slide, I guess a piece of paper to the team to encourage them. Okay, here's the questions, and I know you're trying to, you know, send some of this out maybe ahead of time. Would you attempt to, let's say on the sheet here, maybe you already have some potential answers to whet their appetite to say, okay, are we talking this or that? In other words, kind of giving suggestions to them, say a couple days ahead of time, so that way when they you know, really come ready with, oh no, you had it wrong here, we're leaning this way. Okay, well, great. Then, you know, by again facilitating more engagement, I guess maybe is the right term. But you know, so not just asking, because sometimes somebody asks a question, I'm like, well, what's the context behind this? Because sometimes, you know, I don't quite understand. But if somebody, you know, puts a term down or says such as or like, like this, and I said, oh, okay, now I understand what you're talking about, and then I can think better, rather than showing up and starting that thinking process, if you want to say the day of or the minute of execution.
Yep. Now, Of course, another good question, Mark. And in the beginning, that's we couldn't avoid that. But
Yeah.
I guess I should say since 2015, I've refined the materials. Let's say I've refined the materials. So now there is no reason that you can't not only can you socialize the idea, not only can you socialize the idea, and not only can you socialize who might be at the meetups, but now you can provide very early on where we couldn't before. Now you can provide very early on this stuff ahead of time. You really can provide it ahead of time. So for example, if I was going to do this again, the next time I do this in real life, let's say, like for example, this time the materials I gave for everybody that so they can download it and take it away from this workshop. But in real life from now on, based on just what you're saying, that we have a little bit more knowledge now, I can provide those materials ahead of time with an explanation that says, while you're trying to socialize this idea, while you're trying to line up the right people to come to this meetup, once you've identified somebody to come to this meetup, here's some of the things they might want to look at ahead of time, because you're going to see a couple more of these during this tutorial. You're going to see a couple more times with a couple of more templates where it would have been good to have them to the people ahead of time. So that's one thing to do. The other thing to do is, that's why you sort of want to find out if somebody can be a facilitator and wants to be a facilitator, because one of the important roles of a facilitator is to do exactly what you just talked about. A facilitator will say, okay, here's what we're going to do next. And then they're going to try to read the room, and the room is going to show that they've done the homework or they haven't done the homework. And so the facilitator needs to be able to see right away, well, this is sort of an example of what we're talking about here. What product is it? What makes it desirable and special? This is what I mean by a bulletized thing that goes in here. But so a facilitator most certainly is responsible for doing that. And the other thing, that a good point you just made, is, if at all possible, is to send this information out ahead of time. Once you've said, okay, we're going to try this IPP stuff. We're going to try this more formal type IPP that you're talking about, facilitated IPP. So is there anything you can give us ahead of time? So now we are much more, we're much more better equipped to do that than we used to be. In the beginning, though, it was learn as you go. And so we all were facilitating from zero and contributing from zero. But now, as you rightfully point out, there's no reason for us to start from zero anymore. So we would give this information out ahead of time, and the facilitator would be responsible for getting the ball rolling if the group didn't get the ball rolling themselves. So this again is one of the artifacts from the Meetup for the microgrid reference model. This is the artifact from the Meetup for the resilient hospital reference model. Instead of doing it all on a great big glass board like this, we did a series of flip charts. These are actually giant, the flip charts themselves. And then we took a picture of that. And this is what it looks like in a cleaned up form. This is a cleanup. There, you can have a fillable PDF. You can have a fillable PDF, and that's an actual cleanup form, and that exists. But you can also create a, just a project, a Microsoft product, Microsoft PowerPoint based product like this also. So you still keep your raw data. You take pictures of the raw data and you keep those pictures, but you also clean it up into something that you can brief with, or you might be able to use a tool to parse it later on. So that's the example of the third, or the problem validation phase of the IPP. Now we're going to move from the problem validation phase to the user validation phase. The main artifacts of this IPP phase are PFM4, the personas or stakeholder groups. Personas is an agile software engineering term that is becoming to get used more and more now. Persona means stakeholder group. And so you're gonna create the stakeholder group list, and you're gonna create PFM5, which are example persona templates or cards. And this is that's a part of the workflow that we're talking about now. So the hats are going to take PFM2, refer to PFM2, and refer to this product vision board extended now. And that's how they're gonna refer to all of those and develop. This was the PFM1 is to make sure that the right initial project planning people were in the meetup. PFM2 is their agreed upon project title and purpose statements. 3 is them looking up into the organization and getting down on paper, so to speak, the organization's vision of this possible project and possible outcomes. Now they're going to look in and out. Now they're going to look in and out to make the rest of the project focus mechanisms, beginning with number 4, which is a personas list or stakeholder groups list. Stakeholders external and stakeholders internal that have equities on the capabilities of this solution that they're considering. So here's another eye chart that shows the results of the microgrid reference model IPP team PFM4 personas list development, a glassboard brainstorming session. In this IPP step, each IPP member uses their experience to come up with project stakeholder groups or personas. During this, and so the one thing that should jump out at you now, because this is a cleaned up part of it, but the thing that should jump out as you now is that what are all these names here? Ricky, Logan, Eddie, Nigel, Al, Fred, Ted, and so on and so forth. So during this step, each persona, role, or responsibility is given a fake name. The role and the responsibility is real. The model maintainer, environmentalist, network engineer, standards and governance specialist, those are all real roles and responsibilities of stakeholder groups. But the name of the stakeholder group is actually a fake name and later with a fake icon. And the reason for that is borrowing from Agile software engineering. Again, the best practice from Agile software engineering, the best practice is called personalization of work. That's the best practice. It's called personalization of work. Now, everybody is getting my notes pages also, so you'll get this information that I read as far as all these slides are concerned. But many current project planning and management studies continue to show that project development team members, no matter what methodology they're using, are actually more productive when focusing their work toward a named persona or stakeholder group. It's referred to as personalization of work. It's kind of a interesting phenomenon that's out there now, is that when you're doing your part of the work breakdown structure, it's very useful to be able to refer back to these different focus mechanisms, including the actual idea of personalization for work. It really does help in maintaining productivity. The metrics are there, maintaining productivity throughout the development lifecycle. So here's the cleanup of the microgrid reference model, personas or stakeholder groups. So again, the name is fake, but the role is real. Logan, the logistician, Mike, the model manager, could be 1, 2, or 3 people, it's a stakeholder group. So the persona of Ricky is actually the stakeholder group called risk manager office or risk manager person or risk manager team or something like that. So that's what this idea of personalization of work is called. And that's what the idea of the focus mechanism number 4 or the personas list. And this is another cleanup. This slide shows the PFM4 personas list collaboratively developed by the hats at the IPP meetup for the Resilient Hospital Reference Model project. So let's talk about these PFM1 hats and PFM4 personas. PFM1 hats, the ones that are doing the IPP, are decision makers, supervisors, and other high-level managers involved mainly in project planning. These people you're looking at now, the PFM4 personas, are stakeholder groups involved mainly in project development. They have equities in the project outcome itself. The personas, the PFM4 personas are groups that usually directly or indirectly support PFM1 hats and their expected outcomes. So this slide is another continuation of the LSM Agile IPP workflow, showing how the previously developed project focus mechanisms 1, 2, 3, and 4 are again leveraged by the IPP team to develop together at least one example PFM5 persona, template, or card. So they've gone through now, they brainstormed, the PFM1 hats have said the reason they're there is they could do PFM3 because their normal responsibility is to look up through the organization strategy and goals. But the other responsibilities are to look out to external stakeholders and into the development team themselves and find and speak to and list the stakeholder groups that actually have equities in the outcomes of this system solution development. And so now we're going to take it to the next step as far as the as far as the user validation phase, as far as the user validation phase of this is concerned. The next step is the 5th PFM or the example persona templates. And now the QR code on the lower right here, and also in the handout at the end, this will take you to, I've tried to update this to a 2021 internet site that comes from the Agile software environment, that talks about what are personas and what are persona lists and what are persona templates and cards and that type of thing. Again, you don't have to be Agile. You don't even have to use an Agile development methodology in order to, in the initial project planning, to create this project focus mechanism for any project, any methodology. So this is an example this is the again, as Mark was alluding to, this is what we would give out ahead of time as far as helping people create these example persona templates. We sent out the PVBE ahead of time. You don't really have anything to send out for the PFM4 personas. You just brainstorm that. But but this is the handout, I guess you would call it, that you would send out ahead of time for the PFM5 or persona template. This is the second part of the user validation phase. They're going to work together to develop at least one example PFM5 persona template or card. Now, each one of the PFM4 personas, each one of these will sooner or later have their own one of these. So this is a list. PFM4 is a list. PFM5 is a set of persona templates or cards, and that's what that QR code right there is all about, is information on how to where to get persona templates or persona card templates, and how to fill them in and what goes into them. And this is from Roman Pickler. This is from Agile Software Engineering. This information is from Agile Project Management, talking about the same thing, the persona template.
Okay, question on your persona template. I didn't, maybe I didn't catch it. Does the IPP members fill out the persona templates, or is that something that can be done afterwards by, one of the team or something, after they've been identified?
Now, it's two slides from now, I'm going to say in my notes that the full set of persona templates are done as part of initial project execution. But it's great. It's great. Now, this is a second or third time now that one of you has seen, well, wait a minute, isn't this the way this is possibly the way that's going to be done? It's exactly the way it's going to be done. Well, it's just great as an instructor, as a facilitator, and so on. It's great to see people, as we used to call it, take ownership of the idea. So you get it, and it's obvious that you get it, because what happens is an IPP in IPP, they fill out at least one of these. The PFM ones will fill out at least one of these. Now, based on what Mark is saying, we send this out ahead of time. We give them possibly this information ahead of time, is at this QR code. So when they come in, they go through the PFM4, they go through this way quicker than they would have before. And then they say, okay, now I understand what's going to go into this PFM5 because I've got this information ahead of time. And at the IPP, they're really going to do a guide. They're going to do one of these to where they understand it. And then as part of initial project execution, all the rest of those 5s for all of these 4s will get done and be put into cleanup and post up to where they can be used as tools, as focus mechanisms for the rest of the development. So the IPP does exactly as you say. They do an example, and the other ones are done as part of development. Exactly as you say. So this is a template that that would be in a handout form. And so the thing to keep in mind here, is the first column here, picture and name, is PFM4. That is how you link back to the previous PFM. This is PFM5, and the link back to PFM4 is in the PFM5 template. The first column is your PFM4. That's what goes in here. That's what goes in there. And then the new stuff is the brainstorming for the details and the goals that the IPP team is going to do. So using their knowledge about the named example PFM4, the IPP Meetup team now accomplishes 3 process steps to make each example PFM5 persona template. They assign a fake picture or icon to the fake name given to the example PFM4 on the persona list. For example, Ricky, for example. So Ricky is actually goes into the picture, and you give Ricky a name, put Ricky and then an icon here, and then their role and responsibility. So the name is fake, the picture is fake, the role and responsibility are real. The details are real, and the goal are real. And we're going to get to that. So they assign a fake picture or icon to the fake name. That's the PFM template 5 template left column. They brainstorm real details about the example PFM4. Details means resume, job description items, goes in the middle column. What does that stakeholder group really do in real life? That's the middle column. And then they brainstorm real goals for that example PFM4. Goals mean the system level, goal level things the example PFM4 stakeholder group plans to use the PFM2 project title, product, or service to do. That's the template's right column. So that's how you're constantly needing to refer back to your previous PFMs in order to make the next PFM. And that's how you stay focused on your project focus mechanism artifact, because you do have the other ones so close available to you. So again, for example, this is a glass board. This is a glassboard session in which one example PFM4 persona from the microgrid reference model PFM4 persona list was further detailed into what would become an example PFM5 persona template or card. So you can see where a set of templates for the microgrid reference model MBSC project or any other project could easily become pretty large. Only example PFM5s are developed at the IPP meetups. Each example template or card has a named representation of a distinct PFM4 stakeholder group. Each one has a real set of details in bulletized form, actual resume type skills, and bulletized goals, what each stakeholder group actually expects to use the project deliverables to help them do. The full set of templates or cards helps focus decisions about functionality and design throughout any project. So one of the, we don't talk about initial project execution here. We only talk about initial project planning, but initial project execution does this is one of the sets of things that needs to be completed for it during initial project execution. And so this slide is a picture of the Resilient Hospital Reference Model Project, IPP Meetup Glassboard session, where one PFM4 persona list name, Harry, Hospital Emergency Manager, was further detailed into an example PFM5 persona template or persona card. Now remember, the picture and name column of the template card is made up PFM4 name and icon, and the role and responsibility is real. And the details and goals columns must contain real information about that stakeholder group and its equities in the project. And this is a cleanup version of that, of the example PFM5 persona template card that a project team might post up in a repository-based collaboration tool or site. So this is part of that personalization of work type stuff. And this really turns out to be a good focus mechanism. The details are actually very easy to take from the job descriptions for each one of these stakeholder groups. And then day in the life of, what is it that they actually do? What is it that they actually do is over here in the goals. And you'll see in a minute, by using this, it's fairly easy to pull a thread and come up with the most important final project focus mechanism, which is the initial set of system level capabilities. Because the initial set of capabilities is what everybody tries to get from needs elicitation. That's what they want to get from needs elicitation, is a system level set of capabilities, because the software people parse that into user stories, features, and software work. And the rest of the people parse the capabilities into requirements, testable wills and shalls, and the non-software parts of the WBS. But everybody starts from the expected capabilities from the stakeholders. And this workshop is really all about how you not only come up with the expected capabilities from the stakeholders, but you come up with them in a way that they create these 7 project focus mechanisms that you can constantly refer back to and trace back to throughout the entire development lifecycle. So let's review the IPP focus mechanisms till now. Number 1 are the hats or the perspectives, the IPP team itself. 2 is a project title and purpose statement that they came up with. 3 is a project and product vision board extended that they came up with. 4 is a persona list or stakeholder group list, so they personalize their work. And 5 is an example, at least one persona template or card that you saw here. And it's been discovered and confirmed that the IPP team does know enough about, because their responsibilities are to look into project team member stakeholders and out to external stakeholders. They do know enough to where they can bulletize the job description details for those stakeholders and a fairly good set of bulletized expectations based on their real life, day in the life of their scenarios, and the concept of operations can be used, and scenarios can be used to fill in the goals part of it. So here's where we so we've gone through the introductory phase, we've gone through the problem validation phase, and we've gone through the user validation stage. So now we're going to move into the solution validation stage. And the objective of this meetup phase is to continue using LSM and Agile project management best practices, as well as all the previous IPP project focus mechanisms to capture and validate together system level aspects of the product or service the IPP team wants to include in any system solution project. This IPP phase begins the development of system level expected outcomes or capabilities. And these, as I've just mentioned, these capabilities are the bridge between IPP and any project development methodology. This is just, again, the breakdown of how you use all the other project focus mechanisms to come up with the number 6 focus mechanism in the solution validation phase, the target groups. you're going to work on the target group and big picture parts of what's called a product or project canvas or template. And I've included example fillable PDF product canvas in the workshop materials. And again, product and project are interchangeable. So in this next IPP phase, the solution validation phase, the IPP team uses the previous 5 project focus mechanisms to now start to narrow down together PFM6, the kind of, not specific, product or service the IPP team on behalf of stakeholder groups wants the project to create. Solution here means high-level expected solution, not details about any actual potential solution. In the IPP meetup, the emphasis for the IPP team is on the target group and big picture columns of this particular template referred to as a product or project canvas. And again, this is in the materials, and it's another one of those things that you would send out ahead of time. The IPP meetup target groups list will be derived from the target group column of the product canvas on the left there. The final IPP meetup PFM7 capabilities list will be started or derived from the big picture column of this product canvas. The metrics and product details of this particular are left to the development team when they take the capabilities. When they take the capabilities and break them down into their own details, the software people break it down one way, the non-software people break it down another way. And that's when the metrics and the product details will be filled in. That's again, during initial project execution. For the initial project planning, we want to make sure that the name or the PFM2 title is there, the goal, the reason for creating the product, the purpose, the PFM2 purpose is there, the target group, which we're going to get into now, and the big picture, which we're going to get into now, are filled out by the IPP members. As a first step in developing IPP Meetup PFM6 product canvas, the IPP team revisits PFM4 persona list to bin or group together common PFM4s into a smaller and more manageable set of PFM6 target groups. Literally, groups of personas or stakeholder groups. This slide shows an example of how the IPP Meetup team at the INCOSE Great Lakes Regional Conference of 2018 bin together common PFM4s into 3 PFM6 target groups for their smart toaster project. That's what they did. They tried to do an IPP for a smart toaster project. The value of PFM6 target groups become much clearer as a full set of PFM5s gets developed. Now, this slide is a cleanup of how the IPP team for the Resilient Hospital Reference Model MBSE project binned 14 common PFM4 personas you see on the right side here into 6 PFM target groups you see on the left here. The target groups, the binning or commonizing of PFM4-5 goals and roles, PFM4 list, PFM5 details, PFM5 goals. You can see now, if you have the PFM4 list and each one of those as a PFM5 with details and roles, you can see how those will overlap. You can see how there'll be a lot of overlap there. That's where this binning comes into place here. So what you've got is you've got a bottom up PFM4, PFM5, bottom up to the PFM6. And so that's how you sort of look at it from a systems engineering viewpoint. You've got the components that are binned up to the system level. Components that are binned up to the system level is what you've got here. The PFM6 target groups of binning or commonizing of PFM4-5 goals and roles helps greatly in managing the traceability and optimizing of stakeholders and expected capabilities at the system level expected capabilities. So concerning the PFM1 hats, 4 personas, and 6 target groups, the hats again are decision maker level initial project planners. The PFM4, PFM5 persona or target groups or stakeholder groups, personas, or stakeholder groups are project development stakeholder groups. PFM6 target groups are grouped or binned common project development PFM4, PFM5 personas or stakeholder groups. It is possible that a PFM1 hat might also be a PFM6 target group lead if they also represent a unique PFM4 persona or stakeholder group. That means that they'll be leading a group that's actually using the Resilient Hospital reference model. It's also possible that a stakeholder group can also be a target group if their roles and responsibilities are unique. That is, they cannot be binned with other stakeholder groups under a target group. So this is an example of a Glassboard session in which the microgrid reference model MBSE project IPP team worked together to build example parts of the PFM6 product or project canvas. As with PFM4 persona lists, the IPP names each target group. They're going to keep the same name if they can't be binned, but they're going to have a new name if they can be binned. Like, for example, Helen is a new name. Helen is a new name, but Harry is not a new name because he's his own. He started out as a 4, but you really can't bin him with anybody else. So he also becomes the name of the target group. But Helen now is the leader or the target group lead for the persona, the stakeholder groups of the facilities manager and the materials manager. So that's what that 6 is all about. So here's a cleanup version. Here's a cleanup version of the Glassboard and sticky notes session in which the microgrid reference model MBSE IPP team worked together to build example parts of the PFM6 product or project canvas. Remember, the PFM target group name is made up. The target group icon picture is made up. The target group role is real. The target group goal is real. The target group big picture or the solutions here, those are also real. And the metrics and product details are real, and they're going to be taken care of during initial project execution. The IPP Meetup emphasizes target group and big picture parts of this product canvas. Yeah, so that's so what you've got. So what you've got here is you've got the target groups here. You've got these target groups here. You've got these target groups, and these target groups are made up of overlaps of the. They're made up of overlaps of the details and goals. So each one of the PFM4s have details and goals. Well, come to find out, if you take this first column here of the PFM4, the column of details and goals, in their minds, they don't need any paper, but in their minds, the PFM1s can see there's some overlap here. So that's where this comes from. The combination of their role and responsibility, their details and their goals overlaps enough to where we can just off the top of our head, so to speak, come up with this better binning into PFM6. And so you have this target group now, and this big picture here are title level bulletized capabilities that come from knowing the details and the roles and responsibilities or goals and expectations of those different 4s and 5s that make up the 6. So and you'll see in a minute how quickly you can come up with the last PFM, which is PFM7 initial capability list, by keeping in mind the work that you've done before. So let's do that. Let's finish up this by showing how you would create the 7th PFM or the initial project capabilities list. So the next and final phase is the solution, the solution building phase. We've gone through the introductory phase. We've gone through the problem validation phase. We've gone through the user validation phase, and we've gone through the solution validation phase. And the final phase, and all of this is on that on that one handout that I gave you that I said was a foot stomp, all of this information on which of these phases we're talking about, which of these uh, focus mechanisms we're talking about, and which of the disciplines they pull from. All of that is on that one slide that I showed you. So as far as a foot stomp takeaway slide is concerned. So now we're going to finish up with the solution building blocks phase. Borrowing, again, best practices from Agile software engineering and Agile project management, but again, just borrowing best practice. So they're going to develop together IPP project focus mechanism number 7, which is the initial capabilities list. The IPP team leverages all the previous PFMs and then uses best practices from Agile Scrum, specifically the product backlog item development or PBI development, to create PFM 7, an initial set of solution ready building blocks, otherwise known as the expected system level capabilities. That's what we're after, the expected system level capabilities. Agile software engineering or Scrum calls this list a list of epic or epic user stories, which are exactly analogous to a list of capabilities. So that, again, this just shows how you use all of those to come up with the last one, which is 7. And this is the mechanism. This is the mechanism you use to come up with, what we're looking for is the red part right there. We're looking for these things right here. We're looking for these bulletized title capabilities. These are the capabilities that we want the IPP team, we want them to stay at the high level capability, bulletized title level, as it's called, TITLE, title level capability stage. And in order to come up with these on sticky notes, they use this Agile software engineering epic user story format. For whomever is familiar with this format, this is how the Agile software people come up with their work, is they start from what's called a user story. And the user stories are at different levels. And what we want the IPP team to do is stay at the absolute highest level, which is referred to as an epic. And so applying the following Agile Scrum story mapping, epic user story mapping format to each PFM 6 target group. So keep in mind this target group list on the left side right here. So keep in mind that list on the left side, who actually is now speaking for all these people on the right side. And the PFM 1 is speaking for PFM 1 says, I know enough about this target group right here. I know enough about this target group. I know enough about them. So therefore, because I know enough about them, I can say this right here. PFM 1 is talking. As a PFM 6 target group name, I need the PFM 2 title, product, or service to do one of these things, so that I can do one of these things right here on the right side. That's the thread you're pulling. I need as this, because Samantha is a PFM 4 that's been bin with everybody else. So her details have been overlapped and her goals have been overlapped. And so now this PFM 1 says, as one of these 6 right here, representing this collection of details and roles, as that person, I need the product or service that you're talking about to give me one of these in order for me to do one of those goals under that PFM 5. So even with just an example of PFM 5 that they've done for the IPP, with just an example of that, and with their own knowledge of the external stakeholders and the internal stakeholders and their equities based on their knowledge of what is their job description and their daily roles from their ConOps or scenarios and that kind of stuff, the PFM 1 at the meetup can say, as this target group name, I need that thing you're wanting to build to do this title level capability because of those goals and responsibilities back on those 4s and 5s. So that's this slide is just a bigger version of that format, but this is the holy grail format of agile software engineering right now, right here. As Ricky, I need the resilient hospital reference model to give me this capability so that I can do one of my goals on that PFM4 and PFM5 template. That's what that's all about. So here's a picture of the affinity mapping session, believe it or not, in real life, where the microgrid reference model IPP team used that format to come up with this preliminary set of title, bulletized, epics, or system level capabilities, which is the 7th and final IPP project focus mechanism during the IPP. And this is the picture of the affinity mapping sticky note session where the INCOSE GLRC 2018 Smart Toaster IPP team used the Agile Scrum Epic user story mapping format to develop together their set of PFM7s, a preliminary set of epics or system level capabilities. And so this is a cleanup of the example from the microgrid reference model MBSE project. So they said, so this is these sticky notes right here is this red part right here. That's what they tried to come up with. These sticky notes is that red part. As one of these, as this 6, target group 6, as Samantha, I need the microgrid reference model to give me these capabilities so that I can do these things right here. So that I can do these things on the right side under the goals thing here. That's what that format is all about. And believe it or not, they were able to, with that format in front of them, they were able to come up with these. And facilitator, very important here, facilitator says, oh, no, you don't. Keep it at the abstract system level, title level, bullet level. That's all you need for a focus mechanism. You can break it down using your WBS software and non-software all you want, testable wills and shalls, detailed user stories, all features and all that kind of stuff later on. But what you're here to do today is to agree on the system level, bulletized, title level capabilities. And believe it or not, in setting in those sessions, the resilient hospital reference model was able to use that format and their knowledge of the different stakeholders, PFM4s, and that type of thing, to come up with this really amazing set of bulletized capabilities that will later be parsed into requirements, parsed into detailed user stories, whatever methodology they want to use. It'll be parsed later on. But this is now a matter of record at the system level. Those planners agreed on that title and purpose for the project. They agreed on the vision part, looking inwards and upward in the organization, agreed on the stakeholder groups, and they personalized their work through that, agreed on the details and goals for those stakeholder groups, and agreed on their target groups, and agreed on their bulletized system level capabilities here. And so they were actually able to do that in the IPP. And so again, this is why I put this one in here a second time, because we've gone over a lot of stuff. We've done the introductory phase, a problem validation phase, a user validation phase, the solution validation phase, a solution building blocks phase. We've created these 7 project focus mechanisms, borrowing from these best practices from these disciplines, but clearly seeing that you didn't need to be experts in any of that in order to very quickly learn and follow along and learn and use the tools, the best practices we brought from this. No special tools are needed, and all of the steps accomplished using brainstorming and affinity mapping tools and techniques. So, and so once again,
Mike, I have a
please go ahead.
question. So that's slide 82. So to get to, yeah, one slide back. Yeah, to get to this point, was this a 1 day's work for the IPP? I know it doesn't have to be, but like for this
No,
particular
this
one,
was 3 6-hour periods.
3 6
No,
hours. Okay,
but
so
now, but
three-
part of each one was part of each one of the subsequent. For the first 6 hours, let's say they came up
Yeah.
with some of these. They came up with some of these. The next 6 hours, when they got to this point, then they were able to say, okay, now we want to change some of those, and they changed them and added new ones. And then on the third one, they said we want to change some and add some new ones. So this is this is the result of three times going through this process.
Okay, so just that piece. This is not from the very beginning of the stand up or the, what I want to say, the PF1 phase.
Right.
Like it, this is just this aspect.
This is
of
the PFM ones talking. This
Yeah.
is the PFM ones creating this PFM 7.
Mhm.
This is the PFM ones creating and then refining the PFM 7s with more information, because we had one in April, one in August, one in September. And so,
Okay.
you know, now we did a little bit of what Mark talked about. We were able to give the stakeholders, you know, the hospital administrators and so on and so forth, they better appreciated what was expected of them in 2 and 3 because of having gone through 1. So how you make up for that a little bit is do what Mark is talking about and try now to use the lessons learned and get this information to people ahead of even the first one. Get it to them ahead of even the first one, so where they'll be better equipped to. You'll get more done you'll get more done in each session based on that lesson learned.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
And so again, this is what the artifacts that you come up with. This is the same chart, same slide as before. Now this is an excerpt from the main or primary IPP artifact. This is the primary IPP artifact that I don't show in this. It's an Excel workbook. It's a multi-tabbed workbook. It is the cleanup. It is the ultimate cleanup IPP focus mechanism that you use throughout the rest of the project. Is this Excel-based IPP workbook, multiple tabs. As you can appreciate, this is the main piece of intellectual property for any project. This Excel workbook, based on cleaning up all of those Meetup artifacts and putting it into an Excel workbook, is the primary piece of IP. And so I don't give this out as material. This is the microgrid reference model projects, IPP, and the resilient hospital reference models, IP. IP. So you can get a hold of let's see, I'll go ahead and put Howard, I'll put Howard's name in here. So that's Howard Likens is the leader of the Resilient Hospital Reference Model team. So if you want any more information about any of the artifacts or what went into them, or if you want to become a member of the team or something like that, you can get a hold of Howard Likens and that. But this is, as you can see, an example of something you were talking about a while ago. In Meetup 1 of 3, this is the title they came up with, and this is the beauty of this Resilient Hospital, this IPP Excel workbook. In an Excel workbook, you can take the whiteboard from Meetup 1 where they worked on PFM 2, and you clean it up into this. Then when they came back for the Meetup 1 project purpose statement, and then they came back for the second one, they changed and refined the project title and the project purpose statement. And then when they came back for the third one, they refined it again until what I showed you today. So that's the beauty of this Excel workbook, is you take all of the Meetup artifacts and you can make a history of them in each one of the tabs in this Excel workbook. So this is another excerpt. This is another excerpt from the main or primary IPP artifact, the IPP Excel workbook for the Resilient Hospital Reference Model. This is the project focus mechanism 5 persona templates. And so you can see from that, for example, Alan here is one matrix that I showed you, one matrix, that fillable PDF where you had the column, which was a PFM4 name and role, the detail column and the goal column. Well, what you do with the Excel workbook, of course, now you stack them all of these. This is where you work on completing the set. You can see here that they're working on right now the Resilient Hospital Reference Model. In their initial project planning, they actually have the homework to go back and say, okay, the alert staffer, what goes in the detail column and what goes in the goals column. See, so that's what you see here, is you see them continuing to use this Excel workbook as part of the focus mechanism from IPP, and the focus mechanism, a living focus mechanism throughout the development of the project. So this slide shows some very much ballpark estimates for the minutes it might take at facilitated IPP meetups for an IPP team to accomplish together each of the approach process steps here. Times are based on my experiences facilitating IPP meetups with various groups of IPP team members since 2015. The times also show that IPP meetups are usually facilitated as a series of collaborative workshops too. Is probably in order, you know, you can try to accomplish this, and you can go back the next time and use this time to refine it. So both the microgrid reference model and Resilient Hospital Reference Model MBSE project IPP meetups were a set of 3 facilitated 3 to 6 hour workshops. And so each one of these, you see 60 to 90 minutes. If you've socialized ahead of time, you'll go to the low side of this, 60 to 90 minutes to verify, modify, or assign the PFM1 hats. 60 to 90 minutes for them to develop the project title and purpose statements. 120 to 180 minutes for the PFM1s to develop that PFM3 PVBE. 60 to 90 minutes for them to come up with a persona list. You'd be surprised at how quickly they can come up with that list if they know what they're supposed to be doing there. 60 to 90 more minutes to develop the PFM5 persona template or persona card example, and the rest of them are completed during IPE. 60 to 90 minutes to come up with a PFM6 target group list, and 120 to 180 minutes to develop a preliminary PFM7 capabilities list, because the final list is a living document as far as the final capabilities list is concerned.
Okay, I do have a question on that list. I mean, when we
Certainly.
showed that one page, it was like about, I don't know, just a quick count. I saw like about 80 capabilities.
Yep.
At this particular junction, you've created the 80. Would one try to bin them a little bit better and say, we have, 6 or 8 main groups, which is again the 7 plus and minus 2. Because I mean, I look at that and I go, wow, this is great, but my brain almost explodes, because I'm like, well, no, there's got to be some categories here. Separate them out a little bit. And again, if you have the team doing that, they're the primary ones, rather than handing this off to somebody and maybe letting somebody else try to figure out what the category should be. Would that also be useful at this time?
It not only would it be useful, but it is exactly what they're doing right now. It is exactly what the Resilient Hospital Reference Model people are doing in this thing here. This is an example of the Excel spreadsheet at the end of the 3 IPP meetings. This is an example of that. This is an example of them taking it into the IPE part of it, the initial project execution. They did Alan, for example, at the IPP with those minutes that I just told you about. And then if those people can get back together again, or hand it off to people that are good in the development team, then they refine it and they fill out the rest of the PFM5s and so on and so forth. It's the exact same thing for PFM7. The three meetings for the IPPs for the Resilient Hospital, they came up with these in those three meetings. It was not the job of the people at the three meetings to refine this in any way, but the refinement was definitely part of IPE, and the refinement is what they're doing right now. So the Resilient Hospital Reference Modeling core project team is, as you saw back on the Agile Scrum, you saw that the Agile Scrum started with the product backlog items. And then the first thing they did was prioritize the product backlog items. That's a primary job of the product owner, for example. So you're absolutely right that the IPP team comes up with this big list right here in their three meetings, knowing that at somewhere in IPE, the project team will do exactly what you just talked about. They will prioritize, they will bin, they will refine it, and so on and so forth. So that is important, and it is being done by the Resilient Hospital Reference Model team, even as we speak. So you're absolutely right on that, Mark.
Yeah, I have a comment and question, I guess, on that too. So yeah, I thought, you know, that list of capabilities is like, that's a major accomplishment right there. And I was thinking that's good for the IPP to complete and then hand it all off to the execution team to refine it. That makes perfect sense for me, you know. But then I was thinking, so for them to start refining it, to get that information, refine it, I guess they go back and engage like, who would they engage? The PF4 person, or
They would engage the PFM1 and the PFM4. They would engage both of those. Now, I don't show it here, but I do have another set of slides that shows two pyramids that are turned upside down. And what I mean by that to show is the level of effort done by the IPP team members versus the level of effort done by the project team members as the project moves from IPP to IPE. You can imagine that the responsibility shifts. The bulk of the work is done by the IPP team members in IPP, the PFM1s. But as you move into IPE, that pyramid shrinks. So they're still there at the top of the pyramid for review and vetting and so on. But the bulk of the work, the big part of the work now is being done by the project development team. So the pyramids switch. The IPP, the IPP is an upside down pyramid with the IPP team members doing most of the work and the development team being kept in mind. But when the development starts, that pyramid goes right side up, and the big part of it is the development team, and they refer back to, and they revisit and talk to the PFM1 and the IPP team members, but they take on the bulk of the work at that point. So they do go back and talk to them, but yeah. So it's sort of like what needs elicitation does now. The people that are involved in parsing it into testable wills and shalls and detailed user stories and so on and so forth aren't necessarily the people that work with the stakeholders to get the initial needs. They have to work with the people that work with the stakeholders and take it from there. And that's really what's expected. Again, is the people that are going to prioritize this. They work with the people who worked with the stakeholders and not necessarily with the stakeholders themselves. But the people that made this initial list most certainly worked with the stakeholders. So here's some references. And yeah, here's the references. And again, though, this is that other thing I told you about that you can take later on. And this will get you back to more information about Lean Startup from Eric Reese, more about Lean Startup from Steve Blank, the project management body of knowledge, the business model canvas, that Edward DeBono's 6 hats information, a very good Harvard Business 2013 article on Lean Startup, Roman Pickler and his Agile project management, This is the International Association of Facilitators information. Here's information about how to get a free Lucid Chart account, a persona template and cards, information that I told you about earlier on that, a nice 2020 Agile Scrum Guide, and the Agile Systems Engineering work by Dr. Douglas. That's some more information as far as those things are concerned. And so this is the last part of it the last slide. This is my information. Again, this is part of what you get. This is my information in LinkedIn. This is my information in Twitter, my information on YouTube, and my information in another Dropbox folder. This is my contact information. And again, don't forget to I'm going to go ahead and save my chat again one more time there to save the chat. And so that's the end of it. That's the end of it. If anybody has any other questions or whatever time you all have left here, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, I did order the pre-order Douglas's book. Turns out I was just waving around the one. It turns out I do have his first book, but I just received this back in December. I really haven't had time to go through it.
I take that. I started carrying that with me from July of 2016. I actually gave this tutorial, it's an all-day tutorial to the INCOSE Southern Maryland chapter at Pax River. And I carried that book you've got. I actually carried my copy of it down there, and the people in the room were hardly paying any attention to me. They were all taking pictures of that book. So that book is an important book insofar as it tries to talk about systems engineering in an agile and iterative development for incremental delivery of value. As you all know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. INCOSE didn't go that way. INCOSE and Rick Dove, it is important what they're doing, but they're talking about how to make systems engineering more agile, introducing agility into systems engineering, but they don't on purpose call their version of agile systems engineering in a team, in an agile Scrum team. They've gone a different route as far as that's concerned. So Douglas, in his work, his work with IBM and Rhapsody, and that's trying to get systems engineering to work in the Rhapsody environment, which is IBM's 800-pound gorilla as far as agile software is concerned. So
okay, good. Well, okay, guess good to know, because right now I'm utilizing Cameo, so obviously a little different, but it was just
but again, though, Cameo is a magic draw, the magic draw stuff, and it doesn't make any difference. Again, with Cameo, it doesn't make a difference what methodology you're using. You can still be doing plan-driven waterfall and so on and so forth.
Sure.
You can, and Cameo works fine. It's how do you get systems engineering integrated into an environment that uses object-oriented analysis and design and UML? See, that's that's a little bit trickier, because the software people want systems engineers, but they want systems engineers that can work in their object-oriented analysis and design environment rather than structured analysis and design, and they want them to be able to work in a UML environment instead of a SysML environment. So that's a little bit tricky for systems engineers these days. I mean, we still
bridging that gap is paramount. But okay, all right. Well, good to hear about that. All right.
Okay, so that's that, guys, and I really appreciate your and again, we have the recordings and so on. As a matter of fact, I can go ahead and stop my recording now.
Mike, as a representative of the Chesapeake chapter, if you won't mind, I can present my screen. I'd like to present you with a little certificate of thank you-ness. Let's see if I can do that here. And put this in present mode. Is it working? There we go. So I'll send this to you, but we just want to thank you for facilitating and hosting and putting on this presentation for the chapter, is basically what it is. So you get this certificate signed by Jeff Burlett, who's our president, currently, and myself.
I appreciate that, Clint. Thanks very much.
Sure.
And none of the, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, you were saying you wanted to raffle off the book. Did you want to do that later, or I could do that if you wanted to?
Oh, I guess, can you do that now? Or?
I can do that right now.
Okay, good. Because I'm happy to, I've got it already, I've got it in the box ready to mail. So, you know, whoever is.
Okay. So
whoever is
here we
the
go.
winner.
Let me share my screen. Willow names. I think this is it.
So I'll just get a
You
hold
see
of
this?
the,
I removed myself from it. So
me. Yeah.
just
Okay, good.
Oh, I got 1 out of 3 chance, huh?
you do. So looks like Don Mertz
Okay.
won.
Okay, good. So if you've sent me his, thanks for that. So if you've sent me his email, I'll email him and let him know.
Well, it should be in the chat. I think
yeah,
when we
I'll email
introduced each
Don.
other, yeah.
I'll email Don and let him know that he's won the book, and I'm happy to mail it to him if he'll give me a mailing address. So.
Okay, great.
Yep.
All right. Well, very enjoyable, Mike. Hope to see you again, and maybe when we do some live job fairs again, maybe
Yeah.
I'll be able to tap into your